Why did the jungle feel so alive, yet so silent? That question would haunt Lieutenant Cole for years. The air was thick enough to choke. Every leaf dripped with the heavy sweat of the night, and every sound, the buzz of insects, the distant calls of unseen birds, seemed to vanish into the suffocating dark. SEAL Team 6 was deep in hostile territory, on a mission already gone wrong, but couldn't have known just how wrong it would turn. They were 6 men, 6 of the best America had to offer, and yet in that moment they felt like prey. The first shot cracked from somewhere unseen. It wasn't random, it wasn't exploratory, it was deliberate, targeted, and it told one thing with chilling clarity: they know we're here. "Sitrep," he hissed into his comms, his back pressed against the wide trunk of a massive tropical hardwood. His breath came fast, ragged in his throat. "3 tangos at my 2 o'clock, Kame's voice, calm but tight. "Another group moving up the ridge. They know these trails better than we do, LT. Checked his ammo. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. Something was wrong. Missions didn't unravel this fast unless someone wanted them to. The comms sputtered with static and then died. Silence. Their lifeline cut. No support, no overwatch, no extraction on call, just 6 men trapped in a tightening noose. "Conserve ammo," ordered. "Wait for clear shots, make them count." The team's demo specialist glanced from behind a fallen log. His eyes carried a question couldn't answer. How did they know we were coming? Just 20 minutes earlier, the team had been ghosting through undergrowth, hunting a high-value target. Their intel had been clean, precise, but the precision of the ambush told a different story. Their enemies weren't lucky. They were waiting. The air seemed to pulse with danger, like even the jungle was holding its breath. And then it came. The thunder of AK fire, the rush of boots, voices barking commands in, circling them, and picked out enough words to understand. They were being surrounded, systematically. "We need a diversion," whispered into the dark. "On my mark." The world shattered. A single shot split the night. A crack unlike anything had heard before in this jungle. Not the rattle of an AK, not the stutter of close-range rifles. Something heavier, sharper. A shot that rolled across the canopy like distant thunder. And then silence. Through his scope caught the impossible. The enemy commander, the one shouting orders just seconds before, jerked mid-sentence. His body collapsed in the dirt without ceremony. A clean, single shot from a distance no ordinary sniper could have managed in this jungle. The fighters froze. Confusion rippled through their ranks like a wave. Fear replaced certainty. For the first time that night, felt something other than dread. "What the hell?" muttered wide-eyed. Didn't know the answer, but he knew opportunity when it arrived. "Whoever it was, they're on our side. Move." The SEALs surged forward, cutting through the sudden disorganization with brutal efficiency. 15 minutes of chaos, of sweat and gunfire, and then quiet. They regrouped in a clearing half a kilometer from where the first shot had echoed. Parker, their sniper, crouched low, his voice edged with awe. "That was at least 1,600 meters, through triple canopy. That's impossible." "Check the perimeter," ordered. He wanted answers. Whoever had saved them might still be close. But there was nothing, no footprints, no casings, nothing but the jungle's heavy silence, until called out. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." On the trunk of a massive saber tree, fresh enough that sap still oozed, was a carving, a symbol, a stylized skull with a single line slashed through it. His voice was low, uneasy. "You know what this is?" Felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. He did know. He'd heard it whispered once before in an off-the-record briefing. Not a person, not a unit, a story, a ghost story. Hours later, fluorescent lights replaced the suffocating jungle. The debriefing room at FOB Sentinel buzzed with an entirely different kind of threat. Major Brooks paced in front of the men, sharp-featured, stern. "Run through it again," Brooks demanded. His tone was more accusation than question. "This mysterious sniper, what did you see?" Kept his voice even. "We didn't see anything. We heard the shot, saw the commander go down, then found the marking." "A skull, with a line through it," Brooks repeated, his voice dripping disbelief. "And none of you saw the shooter." Parker leaned forward. "Sir, with all due respect, whoever took that shot is beyond anything I've ever seen. The angle, the distance, the conditions, it's not standard training, not even Tier 1. "Are you suggesting—" Brooks began, but the door opened before he could finish. Colonel Warner entered, silver hair cut close, his pressed uniform carrying the weight of authority that silenced the room. The SEALs snapped to attention. "At ease," Warner said, though his voice offered no ease at all. He cut Brooks off sharply. "This debriefing is concluded." "Sir, we haven't finished." "It's concluded," Warner repeated, leaving no room for argument. Brooks left reluctantly, gathering his notes like a man who hated being dismissed. Warner turned to the SEALs, his expression unreadable. "You performed admirably under difficult circumstances. Get some rack time. We'll talk tomorrow." The men filed out, but Warner stopped with a hand on his shoulder. His tone shifted just slightly, less official, more haunted. "The symbol you found. You're certain it was a skull with a horizontal line?" "Yes, sir." Warner nodded slowly. "Then you're to speak of this to no one. That's an order." "With respect, sir, something saved my men out there. I'd like to know what." Warner's gaze held his for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of something didn't want to name. "No, Lieutenant, you wouldn't." Back in his quarters, stripped his gear piece by piece, his body heavy with exhaustion but his mind refusing rest. When he pulled off his vest, a slip of paper fluttered to the floor. Coordinates. Nothing else. Someone had placed it there without him noticing. Someone who wanted him to find something, or someone. For the first time in his career, Cole felt the line between soldier and hunted blur. And somewhere in the shadows, a ghost watched. Why did the coordinates feel heavier than a bullet? Couldn't shake the weight of the paper he'd found, slipped into his vest. For days he carried it in silence. Medical leave gave him time but not peace. His body healed. His mind did not. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, the number sequence glowing in his memory like a scar. Whoever had saved them and wanted him to follow, and knew once he pulled that thread there'd be no going back. 3 weeks later, the Washington Monument stretched into a pale morning sky, sat on a bench, blending in with tourists and joggers. To the casual eye, he was another off-duty soldier recovering from deployment. But inside, the jungle hadn't left him. Every car horn was a warning. Every shadow was an ambush. The coordinates burned in his pocket. Arlington National Cemetery, not exactly subtle. His phone buzzed. "Team deploying back to K-Zone tomorrow. You still grounded?" Typed back, "Yeah, Doc says extended leave." But it wasn't the doctors. It was someone else who wanted him sidelined. That much was clear. That evening, walked into a veterans bar tucked away on a quiet street. He chose a corner table with clear sight lines to every entrance. Old habits. He ordered whiskey neat, letting the burn remind him he was alive. The bartender caught his eye. Gray hair cropped close, shoulders squared like a man who'd once worn the weight of a rucksack. His name tag said Jack. 2 businessmen at the bar laughed too loud, snapping fingers for refills. "Hey, janitor, another round," one sneered. The other smirked, probably couldn't hack it in a real job. Jack served them without a word, his face blank, his movements efficient, but noticed the awareness in his eyes, the way he scanned the room, the way his hands never fumbled, never hesitated. This wasn't a man broken by civilian life. This was a man masking something sharper. "You serve?" asked when Jack passed his table. A flicker, recognition, weariness. 82nd Airborne, Jack replied. Then he nodded at a posture, his haircut, the way his boots were laced. "You, SEAL Team 6. There was no awe in his voice, just acknowledgement, soldier to soldier. "Rough business sometimes," said. Jack nodded once. "Always is." "Sit for a minute," gestured to the chair across from him. "On break in 5. When Jack returned, it wasn't with a drink. He carried coffee. Another detail. A man who needed to stay sharp, not dulled. "The coordinates," said without preamble. "The ones left in my gear. That was you." Jack's face didn't move. His eyes gave nothing away. "Don't know what you're talking about." "The skull marking, the ghost, that was you." Jack laughed softly. "Sounds like someone's been listening to campfire stories." "A shot like that isn't a story. 1,600 meters, triple canopy, that's not luck, that's a skill set." Jack leaned back calm. "I'm just a bartender now, and a janitor at high, nothing special." Before could press, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stepped outside to answer. "Lieutenant Cole," came a woman's voice, sharp, controlled. "Your interest in recent events has been noted. This is not a path you want to follow." "Who is this?" demanded. "Someone who appreciates your service enough to warn you. Go back to your unit. Forget." The line went dead. When returned, Jack was back behind the bar, serving drinks like their conversation had never happened. But knew better. The jungle hadn't lied, and neither had that shot. Jack was more than a janitor. The next morning, ran the steps at the Lincoln Memorial, trying to sweat out the frustration. But every stride just tightened the knot in his chest. If someone wanted him to stop digging, it meant the truth was buried deep, which meant he had to dig harder. At the World War II Memorial, an elderly man in a Vietnam vet cap sat watching the sunrise. Slowed, drawn by something in the man's eyes. "Beautiful morning," the veteran said. "Yes, sir, it is." "You've got the look, recently back." Hesitated. The old man nodded knowingly. "Nasty business, always has been." "You were there?" asked. "Special operations," the veteran said almost casually. "Back before we admitted we were even involved." He smiled faintly. "Some wars never make the history books." "Studied him. You ever hear about the ghost?" The veteran's smile faded, his eyes sharpened. "Where'd you hear that name?" "Just stories," lied. "Some stories have teeth, son." The man's voice dropped low. "There were rumors even then. Shots no one could explain. Enemy officers taken out from distances beyond possible. A skull mark left behind." "So it's been around that long," whispered. "The ghost isn't a person, it's a program." The veteran stood, surprisingly spry. "That's all I know. For your sake, forget you heard it." He walked away, but noticed something on the bench where the man had sat. A challenge coin, worn smooth from years of handling. No unit insignia, just a skull with a single line. The next day, finally went to Arlington. The coordinates led to a grave in an older section. The headstone read, "Sarah Mitchell, Captain, United States Army, 1985-2017. Fidelity in shadow. No special designations, no unit insignia, just a simple stone." But the date gnawed at him. 2017, the height of his bloodiest years. As stood there, the air thickened. His instincts screamed. He was being watched. He scanned casually, as though paying respects to nearby graves. And then he saw it, carved into the bark of an old oak at the edge of the section. The skull symbol. His phone rang. Commander Richards. "Cole, I hear you've been asking questions." "Just trying to understand what happened out there, sir." "Understanding isn't always an asset. Your medical leave ends next week. Report to Norfolk for reassignment." "My team's going back to tomorrow." "Your team is, you're not, that's an order." The call ended. As left the cemetery, he spotted a black SUV across the street. Government plates, 2 men in suits, watching. That night his apartment felt wrong. Nothing broken, nothing missing, but his laptop had been moved, and the coordinates he'd were gone. A knock at his door made him reach for a weapon he didn't have. He peered through the peephole. Empty hallway. On the floor, an envelope. Inside, a photograph, grainy, taken with a long lens. It showed at Arlington, standing at Sarah Mitchell's grave. Across it, scrawled in black marker, "Back off." But backing off was never in his nature. And whoever wanted him silenced had just confirmed the truth. Sarah Mitchell wasn't just a name on a headstone. She was part of the ghost story. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as dead as the stone claimed. What makes a ghost? Is it death or the choice to disappear? That question circled Cole's mind as he sat across from Jack in a quiet park 3 days after Arlington. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and rain, yet the tension between them was heavier than any storm. 3 years as a high school janitor, said without looking directly at him. Before that, spotty records, holes in your history, almost like it was manufactured. Jack didn't blink. His face remained calm, his voice even. "You investigating all school employees these days, Lieutenant. Just the ones who can make impossible shots in triple canopy jungle." Jack stared straight ahead, watching children chase pigeons near the fountain. His silence said more than denial ever could. Sarah Mitchell pressed, "You knew her." Jack's posture shifted ever so slightly, a breath caught, a ripple across still water. "Lot of people knew soldiers who didn't come home," Jack finally muttered. "Except her grave's empty, isn't it?" said softly. "So is yours in a way, different names, different lives, ghosts." Jack turned at last, eyes hard. "You're fishing in dangerous waters, Lieutenant. I'm trying to understand why my team was set up in the same way hers was 3 years ago." For a moment, Jack's expression betrayed something deeper, not fear, recognition. He leaned closer, voice low. "Some questions don't have safe answers. I'll take my chances." Jack stood, his movements efficient, controlled. "Will your team?" Stiffened. "What are you saying?" "History repeats, Lieutenant, especially when the same people are giving the orders." He walked away, leaving with words colder than the evening air. Phone buzzed seconds later. Secure line. His commander's voice was tense. "Cole, your team missed 2 checkpoints in. We've lost contact." The world seemed to tilt. The team was gone, his brothers, his responsibility, lost. Across town, Jack returned to his modest apartment. He moved with quiet intensity, every step deliberate. Locks checked, windows secured, sensors hidden along door frames. Only then did he kneel, sliding back a false panel in the floor of his closet. Inside, a heavy-duty safe. He spun the combination, opened it, and stared down at the weapon he swore he'd never touch again. A M82 A1. The same rifle that had saved Team. Its pieces gleamed under the dim light, waiting for hands that knew them too well. Beside it lay several passports under different names, and a faded photograph. A woman in desert camouflage, her face half hidden by a hat. Sarah. Jack's encrypted phone buzzed. He answered with a voice weighted by old promises. "I thought we had an agreement, never again." The voice on the other end was clipped. "They found Sarah's grave." "I know, I've been watching him." "Then you know it's starting again. Escalating, it won't stop." Jack closed his eyes. "I'm out, we're both out. Tell that to the SEAL team that would be dead without you." "That was different." "Was it?" The line crackled with silence before the voice returned. "He's getting closer, and he's not the only one looking." The call ended. Jack sat there for a long moment, staring at the pieces of the rifle. Finally, with slow, steady hands, he began reassembling it. Metal slid against metal with the intimacy of an old ritual. "Sorry, Sarah," he whispered into the empty room. "Looks like retirement over." At high, dawn broke with the sound of locker doors slamming and kids laughing too loud. Jack pushed his mop across the gleaming floor, every stroke precise, almost meditative. The work gave him cover. It gave him silence. But it didn't quiet his mind. He thought of Sarah. He thought of. Carson Turner's voice cut through his thoughts like sandpaper. My office smells like feet again. Jack looked up at the assistant principal leaning in his doorway, coffee in hand, designer watch flashing. Every inch of him screamed arrogance. I'll get right on it, sir, Jack said evenly. And make it quick. Superintendent's visiting today. Try not to embarrass the school this time. Jack nodded, face blank. But inside he catalogued Turner the way soldiers catalog threats. Slight limp in the right leg. Aggression telegraphed with forward rocking on the toes. Blind spot on the left side. Old habits. Don't let him get to you. A softer voice broke the tension. Melissa, AP history teacher, stood nearby with a gentle smile. Jack straightened slightly. Just doing my job, ma'am. Well, your job saved my classroom yesterday. That leak would have ruined my students' projects if you hadn't caught it. Anyone would done the same. No, she studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. They wouldn't have. My father was Marine Force Recon. You move like him, always aware, always scanning. Jack hesitated. Words formed in his throat, then died. He simply nodded. Turner's bark echoed down the hall. Today. Jack gathered his supplies, but Melissa's words lingered. Across town, knelt in front of Sarah Mitchell's grave again. This time he studied not the headstone but the ground around it. The soil patterns were off, too loose, too unsettled, not like the graves around it. His phone buzzed, a text, walk away, last warning. But he didn't. At the base of the stone, nearly invisible, was a tiny etching, the skull symbol. She was one of the best. Turned, an old groundskeeper leaned on a rake, eyes heavy with stories. You knew her. Knew of her, 22 confirmed kills at over a mile, 8 through hard cover. The record still stands. You're talking about sniper kills, whispered. The man shrugged. Just repeating what I've heard, visitors talk, I listen. Was she the ghost? The old man's face closed like a vault. Never heard that name. He started to walk away, then paused. But they say she trained someone even better, someone who could make shots she couldn't. Chest tightened, Jack. Back at his apartment, Commander Richards was waiting in the lobby. His uniform pressed, posture rigid. Taking an interest in Arlington, Lieutenant. Just paying respect. To a soldier you never met, Richards' eyes were sharp. Word gets around. They drove in silence until Richards pulled into a secluded overlook above the Potomac. He shut the engine off. 3 years ago, he said finally, a classified operation went sideways, similar to what happened to your team, compromised before boots even hit the ground. The difference? No mysterious savior appeared for them. Captain Mitchell's team, said before he could stop himself. Richards' jaw tightened. I didn't mention any names. Her grave says 2017. Same time, same pattern, that's not coincidence. You're connecting dots that don't exist, Lieutenant. Richards' voice hardened. With respect, sir, the same pattern nearly killed us. It's real. Richards reached into his jacket and handed over a sealed envelope. Read it, memorize it, burn it, then drop this. Report to Norfolk as ordered. Inside found a single sheet of heavily redacted text. One fragment chilled him. Project Ghost, Phase 2 results. Subjects demonstrate unprecedented effectiveness at extreme range. Primary subject, Mitchell S. Success rate, 96% at 1500 m+. Secondary subject, REDACTED. Success rate, 98% at 1800 m+. Blood ran cold. Sarah wasn't a myth, she wasn't a ghost. She was part of a program, and she hadn't been alone. Back at High, a fire alarm ripped through the halls. Students flooded corridors in chaos. Jack moved against the tide, straight to the source. In the chemistry lab, flames licked toward a cabinet marked hazardous. Without hesitation, Jack grabbed the correct extinguisher, suppressing the fire with swift, practiced movements. Carson Turner stormed in, voice sharp. "What the hell are you doing in here? Staff are supposed to evacuate." Fire was electrical. Volatile compounds needed containment, Jack replied calmly. The principal stared. "How did you know which extinguisher?" "Basic safety training." Turner sneered. "Since when does a janitor have training?" "Since this janitor saved your school," the principal snapped back. As the fire department cleared the scene, stood across the quad, watching. He had his confirmation. Jack wasn't just a janitor. He wasn't just a bartender. He was the ghost Sarah Mitchell had trained, and knew his team's survival now depended on him. Why was the past clawing its way back now? That was the question pressing against Cole's chest as he stood outside high that evening, watching Jack disappear into the shadows. 3 days had passed since the chemistry lab fire, 3 days of quiet surveillance. Every move Jack made felt deliberate, every action precise. He wasn't just surviving as a janitor, he was hiding. And couldn't shake the sense that Jack's secrets were bound to Sarah Mitchell's grave, to the symbol carved in the oak, to the whisper of a program called Ghost. But answers never came clean, not in the military, not in life. They came wrapped in lies, redactions, and half-truths meant to keep men like him blind. That night returned to his apartment, only to find Commander Richards waiting, his uniform pressed, his posture carved from stone. "Taking an interest in Arlington again, Lieutenant?" Richards asked quietly. Tried to keep his voice steady, "Just paying respect to a soldier you never met." Didn't reply. Richards gestured to his car, "Come with me." The drive was silent, the kind of silence where words were a liability. Finally, they pulled into a secluded overlook above the Potomac. Richards killed the engine. 3 years ago," he said, voice heavy, "a classified operation went sideways, similar to what happened to your team, compromised before insertion. Except no miracle shot saved them." "Captain Mitchell's team," said. Richards' jaw tightened. "I didn't say her name." "You didn't have to." Richards leaned closer. "You're connecting dots that don't exist." "With respect, sir, those same dots almost killed my men." Richards studied him, then reached inside his jacket. He handed a sealed envelope. "Read it, memorize it, burn it. Then drop this before it burns you." Back at his apartment, tore it open. Most of the page was black bars, but a few words bled through the censorship. "Project Ghost, Phase 2 results. Subject Mitchell S 96% success at 1500 m+. Subject REDACTED 98% success at 1800 m+. Concerns: psychological independence. Recommendation: increased compartmentalization. Warning: subjects demonstrate loyalty outside command structure." Sat back, pulse hammering. Sarah Mitchell hadn't been a legend, she'd been real, she'd been trained, and she hadn't been alone. He didn't sleep that night. At dawn, Jack moved through High's empty halls, his mop gliding over the floors. To any observer, he was just a janitor cleaning up. But his mind wasn't here. It was with Sarah. It was with the SEAL team he had saved when he promised himself he was done. Carson Turner's voice grated across the hallway. "Office smells like sweat again. Get on it." Jack didn't flinch. "Yes, sir." Turner smirked. "Make it quick. Superintendent's coming today, though I don't expect you'd understand the importance of appearances." Jack kept his face neutral, but behind his stillness he catalogued Turner's flaws, his limp, his aggression, his arrogance, old habits. Melissa appeared at the corner, offering Jack a soft smile. "Don't let him get to you. Everyone knows who keeps this place running." Jack allowed himself the faintest smile. "Just doing my job." "You saved my classroom yesterday. That wasn't just a job." Her eyes narrowed with curiosity. My father was recon. You move the same way, always scanning, always aware. Before Jack could answer, Turner's bark echoed again. Now. Jack turned away, but Melissa's words lingered. That night returned home to find the atmosphere wrong. The door wasn't broken. Nothing seemed stolen, but his instincts screamed. His laptop had been moved, and the copy of Sarah's coordinates he'd written down was gone. 3 knocks at the door froze him. He looked through the peephole, empty hall. On the floor, an envelope. Inside, a photo, grainy, taken with a telephoto lens. It showed at Arlington, kneeling before Sarah's grave. Across it, scrawled in black, "Back off." Pulse pounded. He wasn't chasing shadows anymore. The shadows were chasing him. The next morning, he confronted Jack directly. He waited at a park bench, choosing a spot where there was no easy escape, no blind approach. Jack arrived without surprise, almost like he'd been expecting him. 3 years as a janitor began. Before that, nothing. Records full of holes, manufactured identity. Jack didn't reply. "You knew Sarah Mitchell. Don't bother denying it." Jack's eyes flickered, not denial, recognition. "Her grave's empty," said, "just like the others. The ghost program wasn't a story, it was real, and you're part of it." Jack leaned forward, voice sharp. "You're fishing in dangerous waters." "I'm not fishing, I'm drowning. My team's gone dark in, same pattern as Mitchell, same silence. I need answers." Jack's jaw tightened. For a moment his mask slipped. Some questions don't have safe answers. "I'll take my chances." Jack stood. "Then check your secure channels, see if your men made their last check-in." Phone rang seconds later. Secure line. His commander's voice trembled with tension. "Cole, your team missed 2 checkpoints in, we've lost contact." The words hit harder than any bullet. Jack walked away, disappearing into the shadows. But knew he wasn't walking away from the truth anymore. He was running toward it. Back at his apartment, Jack moved quickly, pulling out a hidden laptop. His fingers flew over encrypted keys, bypassing firewalls most people didn't know existed. A single message glowed on the screen. "Spectre compromised. Ghost protocol initiated." Jack typed back, "Confirmed. Assets in position." The reply came instantly, awaiting shadow directive. Jack leaned back, the glow of the screen painting his face in blue light. His jaw clenched with the weight of inevitability. In the corner of the room, a secure phone rang. He picked it up, his voice a whisper. "I thought we agreed, never again." The answer was silence, then a single phrase. "It's already begun." And Jack, ghost sniper, janitor, forgotten soldier, knew he had no choice left. Because ghosts don't choose when to act. They act when the shadows demand it. Why do some names refuse to stay buried? Cole asked himself that as he boarded a near-empty military transport too. Officially, he wasn't there. His orders placed him in Norfolk on medical reassignment, but his heart refused. His team was missing. He couldn't sit behind a desk while his brother's fates hung in silence. So he pulled strings, called in favors, bent rules until they nearly broke. And now here he was, back where it all began. The air hit him like a wall the moment he stepped off the plane, thick with heat, heavy with the metallic taste of tension. Hadn't changed. Jungle canopy stretching endless, dirt roads by decades of war, children watching convoys pass with eyes too old for their faces. But this time wasn't stepping into a mission. He was stepping into a memory. Every tree, every sound, every shadow reminded him of the ambush, the impossible shot, the symbol carved in bark, and the whisper of a name, Sarah Mitchell. Jack had disappeared before left. No goodbyes, no warnings, just gone, but knew he wasn't finished with him, not here, not now. The convoy rattled along a dirt road until they reached forward operating base Raven. The gates creaked open. Soldiers checked papers wasn't supposed to have. He slipped through anyway. Inside, the base pulsed with uneasy energy. Radios crackled with half-updates. Command tents glowed with the low hum of generators. And everywhere, faces carried the same tension. They were bracing for something bigger. Reported to the ops tent, a place thick with stale coffee and exhaustion. Colonel looked up from a map littered with markers. Cole, thought you were out. Temporary reassignment, sir. Studied him unimpressed. Bullshit, you're not on my roster, you're not cleared for this AO. My team's out there, said flatly. I'm not leaving without them. Sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. You SEALs think rules don't apply. Rules don't bring men home. The silence between them was long, heavy. Finally, shoved a folder across the table. 2 days ago, your team went dark in the Highlands. Patrol never checked in. No comms, no pings. Flipped through blurred satellite photos. Dense canopy. Heat signatures faint, inconsistent. You already sent QRF, he asked. Twice, both turned back. Ambushes, mines. Whoever's running that sector doesn't want us in there. Eyes caught on a notation in the margin. Possible foreign contractors. This isn't local militia, muttered. No, agreed. Too clean, too organized, someone with training. Looked up, and you expect me to sit here. Leaned back, measuring him. Unofficially, you want to ghost into, you didn't hear it from me, but don't expect support, don't expect backup. You'll be on your own. Didn't flinch, he'd been on his own before. That night under the cover of moonless dark he moved. Light gear, silenced rifle, enough rations for 3 days, and the map burned into his memory. The jungle swallowed him whole. Hours passed. The silence of the canopy pressed heavy. Every crack of twig, every flutter of wings made his finger twitch on the trigger. He moved like shadow, each step deliberate. And then he saw it. A flicker of movement across a ridge, a silhouette where no silhouette should be. Dropped low, bringing his scope to his eye. The figure moved with lethal grace. Not militia, not contractor. Every step was trained, every scan deliberate. And then the moonlight broke through clouds, catching the edge of a rifle slung across her back. The heart hammered. He whispered before he could stop himself, Sarah. Through the scope her face came clear. Older, sharper, scar along her jaw, eyes that had seen too much, but alive. Sarah Mitchell, the ghost who was supposed to be dead. He almost broke cover, almost called out, but instinct stopped him. Because she wasn't alone. Another figure moved behind her, Jack. They weren't enemies, they weren't strangers, they were together. Chest tightened. The truth slammed into him harder than any bullet. Sarah hadn't just trained Jack. They were both ghosts, both part of the program, both still operating in shadows. He stayed down, breath shallow. The two moved through the jungle with practiced rhythm. Sarah scanned, Jack covered. No wasted motion, no hesitation. It wasn't a patrol, it was a hunt. For what or who couldn't tell. He tailed them, silent as the grave. Hours passed. Finally, they reached a clearing where a small encampment buzzed with activity. Not militia ragtag, professional, organized. Foreign accents mixed with local dialect. Weapons too clean for guerrillas. Crouched eyes narrowing, contractors. Sarah set up her rifle on the ridge. Jack checked angles with calm precision. Listened, fragments of their whispers carried on the wind. 3-man patrol at the East Trail, Sarah murmured. Got him, Jack replied. Wait for the signal. Her voice was steady, cold, professional, the voice of someone who'd erased doubt long ago. The signal came, a flare in the distance. Within seconds, Sarah fired. One shot, a guard dropped. Jack fired, suppressed. Another body fell. Silence followed. The encampment erupted in chaos. Sarah and Jack didn't hesitate. Their shots were surgical, unrelenting. Within minutes, the camp was broken. Survivors scattered into the trees. Watched stunned. This wasn't defense. This wasn't survival. It was eradication, controlled, merciless. And in that moment, he understood the warning in the classified file. Subjects demonstrate loyalty outside command structure. Sarah and Jack weren't following orders. They weren't here for the U.S. military. They were operating under something else. As the last body fell, Sarah scanned the tree line. For a second, her scope paused on position. His breath caught. Her finger tightened. Then she lowered the rifle. "Come out, Lieutenant," she called softly. Her voice carried through the jungle like smoke. "You've been following us long enough." Froze, his cover blown. Jack turned his rifle casually toward the tree line. Not hostile, not friendly, just ready. Rose slowly, rifle lowered, hands open. Sarah's eyes met his. No surprise, no anger, just inevitability. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said. "I wasn't supposed to see a lot of things," replied. "Like your grave, like the program." Jack's eyes flickered between them. He said nothing. Sarah exhaled. "You should stayed away, Lieutenant." "My men are missing." Voice broke just slightly. "Don't tell me to walk away." Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then finally she spoke. "They're not missing, they're bait." The jungle seemed to hold its breath. Stomach dropped. Bait for what? Sarah's gaze hardened. For us. Why would command sacrifice its own? That was the question tearing Cole apart, as Sarah Mitchell's words settled into the humid night. "They're not missing," she said again, her eyes unflinching. "They're bait." Chest felt hollow. Bait for who? "For us," Jack answered flatly. His rifle never lowered, though his finger rested calm against the trigger guard. "You weren't supposed to find us, Cole. Not here. Not now." Stared at them both, disbelief and anger warring in his gut. "So my team, what, they're expendable, just pieces on a board." Sarah's jaw tightened. "That's what we were too, just pieces. We learned that the hard way." Her eyes were harder now, colder than the soldier memorialized in Arlington. She carried scars not just on her skin but in her voice, in the way she held her rifle like a limb she could never set down. "You're going to explain," demanded. "Now, because I'm not leaving without answers, and I'm sure as hell not leaving my men." For a moment no one spoke. The jungle hissed with insects, the leaves whispering secrets overhead. Finally, Sarah gave a small nod. "Follow us quietly, and if you break cover, you're dead before you take 2 steps." It wasn't a threat, it was fact. They moved through the jungle like shadows, each step deliberate, struggled to keep pace without noise. He realized quickly he was out of his depth. They weren't just snipers, they weren't just operatives, they were something else. Something refined, sharpened beyond human tolerance. After an hour, they reached a cave system half hidden by tangled roots. Inside, lanterns flickered over crates stamped with military codes, U.S. military codes. The stomach twisted. Sarah gestured for him to sit. She remained standing, rifle slung across her chest. Jack leaned against a crate, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "You've read the name," Sarah began. "Project Ghost." Nodded once. "It started as an experimental program. Extreme long-range interdiction. Not just sniping. Psychological warfare. Eliminate leaders from impossible ranges. Make the enemy believe death could find them anywhere. Anytime." Her voice carried no pride, only bitterness. "They picked candidates from every branch," Jack added. "Ones who scored off the charts in precision, patience, endurance. But they weren't looking for skills alone. They wanted people they could disappear." Sarah looked away, her jaw tightening. "People no one would miss." Breath caught. "That's why your grave's empty." "They killed me on paper," she said coldly. "That's easier than killing someone twice." Tried to process it, the impossible shot, the skull symbols, the silence from command. "So you're still operating for them?" Sarah's eyes cut into him. "No, we walked away. Ghosts don't stay loyal forever. Not when the same people sending us into the dark are selling intel to the other side." Froze, selling intel. Jack's voice was calm, almost resigned. Your team wasn't ambushed by locals, or even foreign contractors. They were walked into a trap by people you salute every day. Felt the air leave his lungs. You're saying command. Not all of command, Sarah interrupted sharply, but enough to make units like yours disposable. She stepped closer, her presence heavy, commanding. Your men were taken, not killed, alive, because the same people who burned us want leverage, proof, and bait to draw us out of hiding. Throat was dry, then we go get them. Jack's eyes narrowed. It's not that simple. You think you're rescuing 6 SEALs. You're walking into a den with 50 hostiles, all with clean weapons and better intel than you'll ever get. And when you die, they'll write it up as another failed mission just another file for the archives. Leaned forward, his voice cracking under the weight of it. They're my brothers. I won't abandon them. Sarah studied him for a long moment. For the first time, something softened in her expression. Not sympathy, recognition. You sound like I did, she said quietly, before I learned better. Jack shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't argue. He'd learned that look from her long ago. What do you want from me? Asked. Nothing, Sarah replied. That's the problem. You're already in this whether you choose it or not. They'll come for you too. That's what bait is for. Felt the world tilting, every certainty unraveling. He had signed up to serve his country, to protect his team. Now he was being told that same country, his own leaders, were pulling the strings. A silence settled, heavy with unspoken truth. Finally, Sarah broke it. You still don't get it, do you? We're not heroes in this story. We're not saviors. We're the proof that the system eats its own. Jack added quietly, sometimes survival isn't about winning. It's about not letting them write your story for you. Clenched his fists. I don't care what they write. I care about my men. Sarah studied him a long while, then finally nodded. Then you'll need us. The words fell like a verdict. The next morning before dawn, the 3 of them moved together for the first time. Realized quickly he wasn't the leader here. Sarah was. Every glance of her eyes was a command. Every small gesture carried weight. Jack followed her without hesitation. They reached an overlook above a compound nestled deep in the jungle. Raised his binoculars. His blood ran cold. It wasn't a guerrilla camp. It wasn't even disguised. It was a forward operating site, clean and structured, running on U.S.-issue generators. Contractors patrolled with American rifles. Vehicles bore markings that could have passed for Allied forces. And in the center, under makeshift canvas cages, 6 men. Chest tightened, his team alive. He lowered the binoculars, his jaw tight. We go in tonight. Sarah shook her head. You'll die in 10 minutes. We don't wait, snapped. You don't dictate, she snapped back, her voice sharp enough to cut. This isn't your op, not anymore. If you want them alive, you follow my lead, or you lose them all. The tension between them bristled, dangerous. Finally looked away. Fine, but if any of them die. They won't, Sarah said, not while I'm here. That night, as the jungle hummed with unseen life, found himself watching Sarah through the scope of borrowed night vision. She moved like she'd been born for this, every step soundless, every breath measured. Her silhouette barely disturbed the leaves around her. She wasn't a soldier anymore. She wasn't even human in the way he understood it. She was something else, something forged in shadows. And realized the terrible truth. His men's survival no longer depended on him. It depended on a ghost who had already died once. How far would you go to bring your men home? Cole asked himself that as he crouched in the dripping jungle, staring down at the compound through a veil of leaves. The cages were real. The faces inside them were real. His brothers bruised, dehydrated, but alive. That sight steadied him even as it hollowed him out. Because what stood between him and those cages wasn't chaos. It was order, professional, clean. American rifles, American gear, contractors who moved with military precision. And at his side, two soldiers who weren't supposed to exist. Sarah Mitchell, Jack, ghosts. "This isn't a smash-in grab," Sarah whispered, her eyes never leaving the scope of her. "It's a needle through an artery. One wrong move, the body convulses, everything collapses. Your men die before you get close." Clenched his jaw. "Then we don't make wrong moves." Sarah slid her gaze toward him, steady, unblinking. "That's why you're still breathing, because ghosts don't make wrong moves." Jack adjusted the suppressor on his rifle, his voice calm, detached. "Two-man patrol, west side. Intercepting in 90 seconds. We cut them, stash the bodies, then we breach. Silent. Surgical." Pulse thundered in his ears. He wanted to move now, wanted to storm that camp with every ounce of fury he carried. But the discipline drilled into him held. He nodded once. "Your call." They moved. The jungle swallowed them as they slid into position. Watched Sarah melt into the undergrowth, her body aligning with shadows like she'd trained them her whole life. Jack mirrored her, two sides of the same blade. The patrol appeared, two silhouettes moving with easy confidence. Contractors, clean uniforms. One hummed faintly, relaxed. Then Sarah and Jack struck. Two suppressed coughs of rifles, two bodies down, no noise, no warning. The jungle reclaimed them instantly. Exhaled, realizing he hadn't breathed. They dragged the bodies into the brush, covering them with leaves. Sarah gave a glance that said more than words. "This is how it's done." They pressed on closer. The compound pulsed with generators, their hum masking soft movement. Guards rotated on clean schedules, arcs overlapping with military efficiency. These weren't mercenaries scrounging paychecks. They were professionals, loyal to someone didn't want a name. At the perimeter fence, Sarah knelt, her gloved hands working wire cutters with practiced speed. Every snip was precise, every motion quiet. She slid through first, Jack second, last. Inside, the air smelled of oil and sweat and something else, something rotten. They crept along the shadows of supply crates until the cages came into clear view. Parker, the others, alive, but beaten, wrists zip-tied, eyes hollow. Chest tightened. He wanted to call out, wanted to rush forward, but Sarah's hand shot up, stopping him cold. Her eyes burned into his, not yet. A guard strolled past the cages, tapping a baton against the bars, smirking at the prisoners inside. Spat blood at his boots. The guard laughed, kicking the cage. Fists trembled. Sarah's finger twitched. Her suppressed round cracked faintly. The guard dropped, soundless. The prisoners jerked in shock, scanning the dark but remained hidden. They moved closer, ducking between crates until they reached the cages. Knelt at its bars, whispering hoarsely, "It's me, it's Cole." His eyes widened, tears forming instantly. "Lieutenant Jesus," I thought. "Keep quiet," ordered. "We're getting you out." Jack cut the first lock with a specialized tool pulled from his vest. Sarah covered them, scope never wavering. 3 minutes, she murmured. "Rotations shifting, we'll have eyes on us." One by one, the cages opened. The men stumbled out, weak but alive. And then an alarm. Not from the cages, from the perimeter. Floodlights exploded on, shouts echoed, boots thundered. Sarah's voice snapped like a whip. "Compromised, go loud." The world erupted. Shouldered his rifle, firing controlled bursts at contractors spilling into the courtyard. His team, battered but fueled by desperation, grabbed weapons from fallen guards and joined the fight. But it was Sarah who dominated the chaos. Every shot from her was final. Commanders dropped mid-order. Machine gunners collapsed before their barrels even spun. She didn't just fire. She controlled the battlefield, bending it to her will. Jack moved like a shadow, his suppressed rifle spitting death with eerie calm. He covered flanks before enemies even knew they were exposed. Fought beside them, but he couldn't shake the chill crawling his spine. This wasn't warfare. It was execution. Contractors screamed. Bodies fell. The compound crumbled under 3 ghosts and 6 half-broken seals. Within minutes, the air reeked of gunpowder and silence. It was over. The cages stood empty. The courtyard littered with bodies. Generators hummed like nothing had happened. Limped beside, clutching a borrowed rifle. How the hell did you? His words trailed off as his eyes fell on Sarah. Recognition, shock, fear. LT, that's Captain Mitchell, but she's dead, finished quietly. Sarah wiped blood from her cheek, her face unreadable. Not dead enough. The men stared, speechless. Save your questions, Jack said flatly. They'll find this place burned by dawn. We move. The team followed, stumbling through the jungle as Sarah led with unerring certainty. Hours later, at a hidden extraction point, they collapsed beneath the canopy, whispered to just out of Sarah's earshot. Sir, what is she? Stared at Sarah across the firelight, her eyes scanning the dark even now, never at rest. He didn't answer because he didn't know. But as dawn broke, painting the jungle gold, realized something deeper. His men were alive, saved. But the cost wasn't measured in bullets or blood. It was measured in what they'd seen. Sarah Mitchell, the ghost who shouldn't exist, the sniper who fought outside every chain of command, the proof that loyalty was a currency spent and betrayed by the very people who minted it. And knew the war wasn't over. It had only just shifted into shadows. What happens when the truth is too heavy to tell? Cole carried that question all the way back from. The extraction was messy, not the kind of mess that spilled onto headlines or congressional briefings. The quiet kind. The kind where helicopters touched down in the dark and left before anyone could ask what they were carrying. 6 battered SEALs, 1 lieutenant who wasn't supposed to be there, and 2 ghosts who melted away into the night before the rotors even cooled. Sat in silence on the ride back, his men slumped in exhaustion around him. Relief filled the cabin, but it was sharp-edged, restless. They had survived, but survival didn't feel clean anymore. Not when the faces of Sarah Mitchell and Jack lingered in the dark like unspoken confessions. Back in the States, the questions began. Debriefings blurred into interrogations. Files slid across tables with names redacted, dates blurred, missions scrubbed into ash. Lieutenant Cole, how did your team escape ambush? Unknown, sir. Unknown. Yes, sir, unknown. He said it again and again, wearing it like armor, because the truth wasn't for them. The truth wasn't for anyone who would twist it into another buried program, another weapon disguised as patriotism. But the truth didn't stay buried. 2 weeks later was summoned to Washington. Not a hearing, not official. A closed room in a gray building where sunlight never reached. 3 senators sat across from him, their suits perfect, their eyes calculating. Behind them, shadows shifted, staffers, aides, men who never gave names. Lieutenant, the senior senator began, your recent operation has raised concerns. Kept his posture straight, his voice steady. Concerns, sir. Reports indicate you were operating outside orders, that you encountered irregular elements. Respectfully, sir, my men were missing. I brought them home. That's not the question. The senator leaned forward, voice sharp. The question is, who brought you home? Silence stretched long enough to feel like defiance. The senator's eyes narrowed. Do you believe Sarah Mitchell is alive? The name hung heavy in the air. Swallowed hard. Sir, Captain Mitchell is memorialized at Arlington. Answer the question, Lieutenant. He met their gaze steady. No, sir, I don't believe she's alive. A pause, the shuffle of papers, the weight of lies shared in silence. Very well, the senator said at last. This debrief is concluded. Walked out knowing he hadn't convinced them, and maybe he hadn't convinced himself either. Because some ghosts don't fade. That night he sat alone in his apartment, the city lights bleeding into the room. His team was alive, his duty fulfilled, but his thoughts circled back to the jungle, to Sarah's voice sharp as a blade. They're not missing. They're bait. A knock at the door broke his reverie. He froze, hand drifting to the sidearm he wasn't supposed to have at home. Another knock, soft, patient. He opened the door. Sarah Mitchell stood there. Not in uniform, not in shadow gear, just jeans, a dark jacket, her hair tied back, her face lined with exhaustion. "You shouldn't be here," whispered. "Neither should you," she replied. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. Finally, stepped aside. She entered like a ghost, silent, careful, as though she'd already mapped every exit. "Why come back?" asked. "Because you saw too much," she said simply, "and because now they'll never stop watching you." Sat heavily. "Then tell me why, tell me everything." Sarah studied him, her eyes distant. "We were trained to be weapons, not just soldiers. Weapons they could point anywhere, no questions asked, no oversight. We were perfect until we were." "What happened?" Her voice broke just slightly. "We started asking who we were fighting for, why our missions always seemed to benefit the same contractors, the same private interests, why friends bled while someone else cashed checks." Jack's voice came from the shadows. He followed her in, quiet as always. "You know how command deals with weapons that start asking questions. They bury them," said. "Exactly." Sarah's eyes hardened. "We walked away. They built our graves and filled them with lies, but they can't erase what we know. That's why we're still alive. That's why they keep hunting us." Leaned forward, voice low. "And my team, they were bait to draw you out." Sarah nodded once. "You got lucky, you got us instead." Silence settled, heavy, unbearable. Finally asked the question that had haunted him since the jungle. "So what now? You keep running, keep hiding." Sarah's eyes softened just slightly. "Ghosts don't get endings, we just fade." She stood, moving toward the door. Jack followed, his face unreadable. "Rose, Sarah." She paused, looking back one last time. "You kept your men alive," she said quietly. "Don't waste that, don't let them become like us." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving alone with the city lights and the silence. Weeks passed, his team redeployed. Life resumed on paper, but the shadows never left him. Every debrief, every mission, every salute carried the weight of what he knew. Sometimes he walked past Arlington, past the stone with Sarah Mitchell's name etched in it. He'd stand there, hands in his pockets, watching tourists pass, listening to the silence of the dead. He never spoke her name, never told the truth. Because some truths don't belong in daylight. They belong in the shadows, carried by ghosts. And maybe that was the point. Some wars aren't fought for victory. They're fought to make sure the people you love live long enough to tell their own story. Walked away from the grave, the city skyline burning on the horizon. His men were alive. His soul was. But he understood now. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.